the future and want to have some good discussions. NBS team, I'm told you wanted to show us something of what the region is looking into in terms of at least the person in charge of the display, what we are looking into. We have very many ambitious projects. 5 airports, I think. There was Kotido, there was Rua, there is Imbarara, there is Entebbe. We even are trying to do helipads, I hear, where helicopters can land on top of a building if you're stuck. We are very ambitious human beings. And then want to do roads, Jinja Expressway, then Entebbe, then Masaka, Mpigi. I don't know what else is coming. We also want to see some sky rises. So the region is very, very full of ideas. And these ideas have a lot to do with taxation, both in terms of raising the money, but also making sure those projects raise us the money as we do them. Where is the display of the projects? If anybody doesn't have it, we will be moving on. Our program is with you. Those booklets, the notebooks, Siatini has been kind enough, and want to really thank Siatini for sustaining this conversation for us. I will be recognizing the people in the room who have come to be part of this function in their various capacities. Arrive and breakfast really was to take us up to 9:50. So we seem to be right slightly behind schedule. We're supposed to have an opening prayer. Who came with a prayer? Who can create a prayer from here? I'm still trying to see who can pray for us. Oh yes, please, thank you. You can create it here, you came with it. Can we have a microphone right to the other side so that people can hear that prayer? Who has the fastest feet? Please ask your neighbor whether the journey to here was good. Sometimes we meet people with sirens. The roads are already narrow, but people with sirens want us to give them the road. So where do we go? In people's plots, gardens? There are no gardens in Kampala. We have an opening prayer there.
Let us humble ourselves and pray. Kind loving Father, we thank you for the gift of life you have given us. We thank you for the general mercy you have granted us. Father, we pray you be amidst us as we discuss issues that are good for the development of our country and for the future, as it has been said by the moderator. We pray that you be amidst us during our stay here, protect us from evil spirit, and guide us whatever we are going to discuss. Give us knowledge and wisdom. I pray this through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Thank you very much. Our program after the prayer, we have some remarks which will be coming our way from the organizers, Siatini, Jen Nalunga, or her representative. We shall have an ambassador representative from Ireland, the permanent secretary or secretary to Treasury, or his representative. Our guest of honor will be arriving here anytime. We are given an hour of 10, which is just past, but he'll be with us, joining us, and then we shall have some kind of conversations which will have a number of people bringing us their views. As we get there, I know each one of us here came in with some view on tax. You're not going to formulate your views here, but you possibly had your own other views out there about these projects and what you see the region. I wanted to give a slot to 2-3 people. By raising your hand, you can give us your 1 word, 1 minute. Anybody? Counting 1. Going twice. Is there anybody who wants to give us their opinion? What do you expect from this meeting? People came with no views, eh? You all came with blank sheets of paper to write on in your brains, which is okay. But I want to believe you're already happy or angry. The tax year closes in another 5 days. So please file your returns. I hope you know how to do it. In the event you don't know how to do it, there is a tax office on Kitante Road. Go there, they will be glad to help you. It can be very complicated paying and submitting taxes, leave alone remembering how much you earned, how much you spent on the business, and therefore how much is taxable income. Can be very complicated, but those guys are there to help us in these things. We are making progress to build Uganda together. Anybody from URA, thank you very much for making sure we are building Uganda together, both the knowledge and making the submissions. Siatin, you want to tell us one or two things about this event? You're supposed to be giving us your opening remark. Is this a time you can do that for us? Otherwise, I will open what is not mine.
Thank you so much, Dr. Fred Muhumuza, our moderator for this sixth edition of the EAC Post-Budget Dialogue, Financial Year 2026-2027. And before I really embark on sharing a few things as requested by the moderator, I would like to recognize the different dignitaries that we have and we expect to have. But before I also do that, my name is Herbert Kafero. I'm the Deputy Executive Director, Siatini. So I'd like to start with a written speech on behalf of the Executive Director, Siatini, Ms. Jena Lunga. The Right Honorable First Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of East African Community Affairs, the Permanent Secretary and Secretary to the Treasury, represented by Mr. Paul Lukoma, the Deputy Head of Corporation, Embassy of Ireland in Uganda, honorable members of East African Legislative Assembly, those that are joining us online because this event is both virtual and physical here, representatives of the EAC Secretariat, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, development partners, civil society partners and leaders, private sector representatives, members of parliament here in Uganda, members of the media. I'd also wish to recognize a board of trustee member of Siatini, Professor Mwambusi Andebesa, who is in our midst. He's right there. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. On behalf of Ms. Jena Lunga, Executive Director of Siatini, I warmly welcome you to this 6th East African Community Post-Budget Dialogue for Financial Year 2026-2027, which is being held under the theme, Leveraging Regional Integration Through Enhancing Domestic Resource Mobilization, Prudent Debt Management, and Resilient Trade and Investment for Improved Livelihoods in the EAC. Habari za asubuhi, ndugu zangu wa Afrika Mashariki. I did not get a response. Asante. I would like to sincerely appreciate the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, and the Ministry of East African Community Affairs, as well as the rest of the Budget Transparency Initiative partners, for working closely with Siatini towards organizing this 6th edition of the EAC Post-Budget Dialogue for the financial year 2026-2027. We also extend our appreciation to the Embassy of Ireland in Uganda that is supporting us really, specifically under the project on strengthening tax and revenue improvements for development in Uganda, STRIDE project. It's really a very, very important project because it is contributing to the domestic revenue mobilization strategy. Now we have DRMS 2, which is also very important because as Uganda, we are looking at economic resilience, but also we are looking at ensuring that we increase domestically generated revenue, which is very important, just like other countries are looking at the same. And as well as the rest of the National Budget Transparency Initiative partners that joined us for this very, very important engagement, but also joining us in co-organizing this engagement. We further acknowledge the East African Legislative Assembly, Honorable Francine Rutazana, who is the chairperson of the Committee on Trade and Investment at the East African Legislative Assembly. She joined us virtually, and she's really a strong supporter of our work. The media, thank you so much for relaying this to the wider public and across the EAC, because we are live across Siatini social media platforms and live on NBS. The 6th edition of the EAC Post-Budget Dialogue reflects our shared commitment to strengthening public participation in regional economic governance and ensuring that fiscal decisions translate into real integration outcomes. So this dialogue comes at a time which is really critical, following the tabling of the EAC budget, which is amounting to 110.9 million US dollars for the financial year 2026-2027. And this was tabled by the Right Honorable Rebecca Alitwala Kadaga. And kudos to Uganda, to all of us, and to her in particular for raising our flag very high, and for really standing tall in pursuit of the various ambitions for the EAC regions, for the EAC region. And the EAC budget for financial 2026-2027 marks the start of the 7th EAC development strategy, 2026 financial 2026-2027 to it's for the period 2026-2027 to 2030-2031, which is anchored on deepening integration and unlocking its benefits. So the EAC budget prioritizes quite a number of things, which range from institutional strengthening, trade and value chains, industrialization, infrastructure, social integration, monetary union, peace and security, that reflect the right ambition for the East African community. We also acknowledge the achievements registered so far, the regional growth of 5.8% in 2025, above the global average, intra-EAC trade rising by 28% to $19.3 billion. Over 35 non-tariff barriers have been addressed and resolved. Continued infrastructure expansion, including major regional corridors, strengthened cooperation in health, digital innovation, and climate resilience. And those are important gains, really, that confirm that regional integration is working at the macro level. However, a central question remains. Why does strong regional economic performance continue to coexist with weak improvements in employment and equality? That's a question for all of us. Ladies and gentlemen, across EAC partner states, fiscal realities remain constrained. Tax to GDP ratios remain low at between 11 to 15%, limiting domestic financing capacity. A significant share of national budgets is absorbed by wage bills, around 25%. Debt servicing continues to consume a large and growing share of revenues, constraining development spending. Meanwhile, corruption and inefficiencies continue to drain an estimated 20 to 23% of public resources in some countries, weakening service delivery and development impact. But also at the same time, national budgets reflect the scale of ambition. We see the Republic of Kenya budget is around Kenya shillings 4.8 trillion. Uganda, 84 trillion Uganda shillings. Tanzania, 62 trillion Tanzania shillings. Rwandan francs, 7.8 trillion. However, ambition must now be matched with efficiency, discipline, and results. We must be honest. We risk allowing ambition to outpace reality. And unless we confront structural weaknesses in revenue mobilization, project implementation, and expenditure efficiency, really we might remain ambitious, but the reality on the ground might speak otherwise. So ladies and gentlemen, to unlock transformation, partner states must urgently realign fiscal and economic policy around productivity and integration outcomes. And when I talk about partner states, I mean EAC partner states and all of them, not just a few. Priority actions include the widening the tax base by integrating more of the informal sector into productive taxation systems. We recognize as Siatini that Ministry of Finance has really taken up this seriously, and recently we had the PSST talking about the new informality within the formal sector. So the tax evasion, which is really within the formal sector. When we talk about widening the tax base, sometimes we see the deepening of it as opposed to widening. But there are many potential revenue sources that we can look at as we widen the tax base. But also strengthening tax administration through efficiency, compliance, and institutional reforms is important. And combating tax evasion, illicit financial flows, which continue to undermine fiscal capacity, should also be really prioritized. Supporting small and medium enterprises to formalize and scale, enabling them to expand jobs and broaden the tax base is also critical, because when we talk about the private sector, the reality of our private sector is that it's comprised of small and medium enterprises. So when we talk about the private sector and we praise the corporations, all focus on those big players, we will not be addressing the indigenous private sector and the realities and the plight that they really face every day. Ensuring debt is strictly directed to productive investment, including infrastructure, energy systems, industrialization, trade corridors, and digital transformation is all important. And at Siatini, we believe debt itself is not the problem. The challenge is whether it finances transformation or consumption. And that's for all of us to reflect and ponder on. We acknowledge progress towards the monetary union, the 4 partner states meeting inflation convergence criteria, improved fiscal deficit and debt compliance indicators, expanded harmonized statistical frameworks. However, convergence remains uneven. Without deeper fiscal and taxation harmonization, the monetary union risks remaining a technical aspiration rather than an economic reality. We therefore call for strong enforcement of convergence criteria, harmonized tax policies to avoid harmful competition, effective mechanisms to curb base erosion and illicit financial flows. I know these are a bit of technical terms, but we have so many experts who will speak to this and break it down. So ladies and gentlemen, despite all those challenges, East Africa remains one of Africa's most promising growth regions, supported by a large and integrated market, a youthful population and growing labor force, rising consumer demand and urbanization, expanding production and industrial potential, and intra-EAC trade continues to grow, reinforcing that integration is working, but not yet optimally leveraged for inclusive development. The opportunity before us is really clear. We must ensure that trade, tax, and investment policies function as a unified development system, not isolated national instruments. And when trade expands, it must strengthen fiscal capacity. When investment grows, it must generate jobs and productivity. And when integration advances, it must improve livelihoods. So as we consider debt management, it must improve livelihoods. And we must also reaffirm that debt is not inherently the problem. So the critical issue is its use. Debt must finance productive infrastructure, like I earlier mentioned, and we are aware as Siatini that we borrow to finance some of the ambitious projects, but also the drivers of the economy here in Uganda. For example, agro-industrialization, tourism, mineral development, science and technology. And we can't really achieve industrialization with our meager resources collected through internally mobilize revenue. So sometimes we have to really borrow in order to catalyze industrialization. But we must ask ourselves, do we borrow when we are ready, or we borrow when there is a need? And the two must be harmonized. The need can be there, but the readiness sometimes is not really yet addressed. So we must harmonize that. And only then can debt become a tool for development rather than vulnerability. As at Siatini, we advocate for debt, a development-oriented debt. And ladies and gentlemen, the financial year 2026-2027 budgets, EAC budgets, reflect ambition and regional commitment. But ambition must now meet lived reality. And the financial year 2026-2027 budgets reflect the ambition and regional commitment. But the reality must be addressed. And integration must move from growth to inclusion, from trade expansion to livelihood transformation, from institutional progress to citizen prosperity. Only then will the East African community truly become a community not only of states, but of people whose lives are tangibly improved by integration. And with those remarks, I warmly welcome you once again to this important dialogue for God and my country. Thank you all for listening to me. And once again, I bring you greetings from Siatini's Executive Director, Ms. Jena Lunga. She's in Arusha for a regional engagement. And I would like to emphasize, Siatini is not just a national organization in Uganda. It's a Pan-African regional, sub-regional NGO and a think tank that works to promote equitable trade, fiscal, and investment-related policies for improved livelihoods for people in Uganda, in the EAC, and Africa at large. And later this year, in July, we will be celebrating 30 years. So we've come of age, and we are still here. Thank you so much. So we invite you all to continue to work closely with us. We need your support. We need to partner with you. We need you on this journey because we can't do it alone. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Herbert, for the remarks. The information there is quite heavy to chew, but these are the very things we need to engage and understand them. Is there an EAC? What does EAC represent for us? You can listen, see some of the countries in the EAC are not in the booklet. So there are some that are joining us and information is not easy to pick up and bring up. But that's the task. We want to build our EAC together because it's the only way we can be able to survive. I want to recognize Honorable Namlondo Sara. Welcome. You are a people's person, so it is easy to wave at the people. These are our representatives, Honorable Tim Bernard from Apache in the house, stepped out. Okay, he'll be back, we'll be able to see them. And as we move on, you want to see what does the tax mean. Yesterday, I saw a friend shared with me part of the domestic borrowing that government intends to do. And I think we need to have a conversation. Paul Akuma, we need to have a conversation on how do we tax the incomes from those who buy government bonds. If you are going to tax Stanbic on a 15-year bond and you tax them 5%, but when they make money by lending to homes, you tax them 30%, what is the, aren't we losing some revenue there? We can just stretch it and say, regardless of where you make your money, because these things were many years back when we wanted to encourage people to buy government bonds. So you say the income you earn from a government bond will be taxed fairly. But now I want to believe we are past that phase. People know what a government bond is. We can tax even a 20-year bond at 15%, and people will still buy it. Many of them don't have options anyway. So why don't we pick our money and run with it? So there are some number of conversations to have, but also what does that mean if a 15-year bond is 15%? Why should I invest in a school? Why should I invest in a tomato factory? Why don't I put my 1 billion in a government bond. After all, they are promising to give me 150 million per year interest. Even if they tax that, I will remain with about 140 million. Divide that by 12, I have my 12 million per month, and my billion is intact. And I'm not hassling with the employees. So what is the economy doing in terms of jobs creation and growth? So taxes has more implication than just raising money to hand over and spend. It's a growth tool, and want to have that conversation in this meeting. I still want to keep opening windows for people who want to give their views. Remember, the plenaries may be so packed that you will not have an opportunity there. So speaking now is a good idea. That's why I want to keep encouraging people. Yes, please. I want to encourage people to keep coming in. You see, we're already behind schedule, so I'm going to squeeze the plenaries, including squeezing them out, but I will leave them there. Anyway.
Thank you so much, Prof. As you talked, I think my mind is being stimulated. I just want to talk about of the trade order of recent, and I want to use a scenario of where I live in Nansana, and talking through the domestic resource mobilization. I think I want to suggest that mainly the women who were removed out of those roads. I have observed that many of them have been really going into looking for small loans to make sure that they pay, because where they have removed these stalls, the owners of the land have decided to put the lockups, quick lockups, and they have asked the tenants to come and pay for a year, of which is going to be a little bit hard. So I really want to suggest that we have this conversation and looking at the issue of resilience in trade and investment. How do we ensure that these traders, the business people who are going to use those lockups can be given some time, maybe 3 to 6 months, then the revenue can come later to demand for tax. Thank you so much.
A very good observation. You know, sometimes you look at a business as a business, but it's a livelihood to the person who runs it. Yesterday I was discussing with my student about PDM.
Sorry, my name is Elliot Olizara.
Okay. Yes. Elliot is, I think, what people can easily go with. But if you are from the West, you know what Olizarwa means. She will be born, eh? So she's not yet with us. But the Elliot is with us, so call her
Doctor,
whatever is another. That hand is welcome. I hope people are taking notes of these important views. As he comes in, as I've said, this business is a livelihood for the other party. So when the business earns 10 million a year, the person has to remove school fees, rent, medical off the 10 million. And if something is left, it is the business expenses. So if you look at the 10 million as an entire taxable income, we are not being fair to this citizen for whom it is a livelihood, like many of us do. Yes.
Thank you, Doctor. My name is Bahasha Becker. I'm the Research, Policy and Advocacy Officer at Kasita, Uganda. Why I introduce myself in detail is because I'm going to speak in that line of trade. I have observed with some concern, courtesy of my office, that many times when we are speaking about private sector, I think we tend to bundle a number of elements that would be better served if they were separated. A point in case is exactly about trade. If you've taken observation, you realize that many times we speak in detail, speaking about private sector, and we've ended up missing the most important ingredients in the aspect of trade. I've had to deal with that narrative because I want to propose or to tickle people's minds here that how about in the future we begin mainstreaming trade, not necessarily under private sector, because we tend to miss out a lot of elements that would be very good if we looked at them singly, regardless of the sector that we are speaking about. You may want to take examples. For example, when you look at the agribusiness side, many times trade is never talked about or talked about in very insignificant ways. But it aligns with almost 63% of what happens there. If you've interacted with statistics, you know that about that percentage of Ugandans eat from their pockets. So is the same with others, including industrialization and any other that you may want to talk about. So my proposal or my insight that I want to share with everyone in this room is to begin a conversation in that line. I don't know how it can happen, but I just thought I should bring it to this room so that the brains in here can begin thinking about it. Thank you.
So how do we handle trade? It's private sector, but we want to open up that private sector. We'll have that conversation so that we do not miss them out. How do we handle infrastructure? Your Excellency, the representative of the Ambassador of Ireland, we're happy to see you. The Embassy of Ireland took me to Ireland at their expense to enjoy the good things there. And I had a very interesting conversation. I landed at the airport at night, and there was this big road of 140 kilometers, dual carriage like the Entebbe Expressway. We all remembered Ireland's struggles during the financial economic crisis. And so I had courtesy to ask, how did Ireland build this road? They said, no, this is not Ireland. This is the European Union. How I wish the standard gauge railway was the East African community. So that's not just Uganda struggling. Because these roads Uganda struggle, but they serve the entire region. So they have reached that level to say, Germany, you have the money, but you use these roads to trade. Why don't you contribute so that we build the roads? Germany, you have the money, you know, why one of our members can't find all this. So they are really European Union. Do we get to that level? I am not very sure, but that's where we aspire to go. They have really built up, I like Ireland as examples. They have surplus. They have all the jobs that you need, but they have found these niches, pharmaceutical industry and many other things. Policies about development. Then you can tax. Otherwise, if you begin with taxation, you are eating the eggs. There won't be chicks. Other contributions? Yes, please. There are sides I can't see. Please raise your hand, and then body who sees the hand there, please flag me. My name is the shortest to mention. It's Fred.
Yeah, thank you so much. My name is Biangwa Angela. I'm the Executive Director for Renzo and Corruption Coalition. So as we discuss the domestic resource mobilization and prudent budget management, we recognize that corruption and mismanagement of these efforts still exists. So we have reports from IG, we have reports from Auditor General, frequently identifying the mismanagement of these financial resources. Therefore, enhancing revenue collection must go hand in hand with strengthening transparency, enforcing sanctions against corruption, recovering lost resources, and implementing audit recommendations. I know there are members of parliament here. So citizens should not only be asked to pay, to contribute to these taxes. They should see that these resources are managed responsibly and deliver tangible improvement for their livelihood. Because I represent a grassroots organization, and when I look at the way citizens, of course, are demanded to pay taxes, but when you look at, for example, our road, I'm talking about the Fort Portal Road. For me, I traveled on it, but I feel like I'm still sick. So we must be able to see that these services are given to us while we are paying also the taxes. Thank you so much.
A young man used to say, there is no road to Fort Portal, there is an idea of a road to Fort Portal. I've been on that road, I hear your pain. It has taken us more than 10 years being on that road. And the last I read about Honorable Katumbo Amara before he shifted dockets, he was saying, I've not been given money for that road. Even as you are where you are, I'm only going to be maintaining the status quo. But I'm hoping Biamukama will be able to secure the money, because he comes from somewhere around there, maybe, that if that adds value to the need. But this is a tourism road, this is an agricultural road, this is a security road. So if you really want to justify it, it ticks all the boxes. The Honorable Minister will be walking in shortly, and then we'll be able to follow our program. As you can see, Siatin has spoken to us on the program. The Ambassador of Ireland will be coming in after the Minister is here, and then the PSST's representative, and we'll be ready to go on. So I don't want to begin anything big as of now, because anytime the Minister will be walking in. But I want to recognize friends of ours who have come from where it happens, the local governments. Very critical for us. So Mr. Teko John Bosco, the town clerk for Napak, you may want to wave the people so that they can recognize you by face. Welcome. It's a long way, so but welcome. On Mr. Sebukera Geoffrey or Gregory, town clerk, Nakasongola, town council. Yes, welcome, sir. Robert Nwamanya, town clerk, Bushenyi, Ishaka. I am going there tonight, so I hope I will find some goat ribs or at least some Irish to eat. I need something. Porridge is okay. Mr. Lotu Christopher, Deputy Town Clerk, Kotido Municipality, you're welcome. We have Longolio John, Town Clerk, Moroto. You're welcome, sir. We have Chinobe Eric, the Deputy for Mitiana Municipal Council. You're welcome, sir. Minusima Willis, Town Clerk is Singiro. How are those steep curves around there? I hope they still exist with some crops on them. I will tell a story on Isingiro if the time allows us. A beautiful place to be with a lot of challenges, but they are managing by the grace of God. Judith Birabwa, Town Clerk Kasanda, you're welcome. Thank you very much for coming in. I have Philip Lodo. That one is coming in from Nakapiripirit. And then Muboki Paul coming in from Apache Municipal Council. Welcome. Are we progressing with that bridge over the Nile? We wanted to make it easier. There is a ferry there, and sometimes the ferries have their time zones. So we wanted to put a bridge there. The Honorable Minister has come in. We will stand, we'll have the anthems, we'll have the rest. You can first stay seated until he gets to his seat, but I'm just giving you a heads up of what is going to transpire in the next few minutes. Honorable Minister Magodi Ikoya, just in case you do not know his name and you've seen his face, or you know the name and you have not seen the face, Honorable Minister, you're welcome. We've been waiting. Thank you for coming in. He's the Minister for East African Affairs. These are his business. This is his business on a daily basis. Ladies and gentlemen, let us stand for the anthems, and then we'll roll on with our program. Thank you. You may resume your seats. Honorable Minister, once again, you are welcome to this sixth dialogue on the post-budget discussion for the East African community, which is in your docket. While you were attending to other state duties, we had an opening prayer and we also had a breakfast. My prayer that where you were, somebody gave you breakfast, but in case they did not, Sheraton still has a ministerial breakfast for you that we can always make sure you'll get at the right time. The chief host for this event is Siatin, and I want to invite my friend Herbert Kafero to come and do what hosts do that I cannot do. And then we'll have remarks from the ambassador of the Ireland. We'll have remarks from the PSST and Secretary of Treasury, the Minister of Finance, and then the Minister will give us the keynote as we do those proceedings. So those are the quick things we're going to have. We've already heard from Herbert, so he's going to do a little bit of what hosts do. And then possibly I will ask you to invite the ambassador of the Ireland when you have finished, and then we'll see how we proceed.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fred Muhumuza. We need to first appreciate the moderator for steering that first part of this dialogue. Thank you so much, because now it's getting more interesting and we have the right stakeholders in the room. And I would like us to give a round of applause to welcome the Minister. Thank you so much. Allow me in just 3 minutes to bring the Minister up to speed with a few things we have discussed so far, but also to give a little bit of context to the dialogue. Dear Honorable Ikuya, you're most welcome. And I bring you warm greetings from Siatini's Executive Director, Ms. Jena Lunga. She's in Arusha for a regional dialogue. I think it's the intergenerational women's dialogue, and that's where also a number of IALA members are, and Right Honorable Rebecca Kadaga is also part of the dialogue. So we also have a number of roles in that dialogue, and later today tomorrow we'll be signing a memorandum of understanding with East African Legislative Assembly. So Siatini is cementing its position in the EAC region and working with the right stakeholders. And we're glad to be working closely with your ministry, Ministry of East African Community Affairs. So distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Right Honorable Minister, this is the 6th edition of the East African Community Post-Budget Dialogue for financial year 2026-2027. We've continued to engage and bring in the regional perspective because it is important. Most often, the respective EAC countries tend to work as if they're in a vacuum. But we're committed to EAC regional integration. And it's very important to link the respective national budgets to EAC ambitions and EAC affairs. And so this dialogue is the climax of the Budget Transparency Initiative engagements. And the Budget Transparency Initiative is really what brings all of us together in Uganda, and this is spearheaded by the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, and that's where civil society joins government, ministries, departments, and agencies to engage and bring in the voices of the citizens, but also to popularize government programs, because that is also important. Government has a number of programs that are embedded within the budget for this financial year. But as Budget Transparency Initiative partners, our role is to also interrogate these programs, but also to provide some perspectives, but also be able to shape how those programs are going to be implemented. Although this is a regional conversation, but Uganda's focus is on ensuring that implementation of a number of critical programs and the drivers of the economy, including agro-industrialization, tourism, mineral development, science and technology, is done efficiently and effectively, because the allocation that we've been really advocating for, the increased allocation, In some of the programs, the allocation has been increased. For example, agro-industrialization, Uganda allocated 2.26 trillion, as opposed to previously where we saw it was oscillating between 1.7 and 1.8 trillion. But allocation enough is not, allocation alone is not enough. We need to look at the implementation. How is implementation done? And of course, there's also another reality of the increasing indebtedness. And part of what government is looking at is implementing and operationalizing some policy tools, the public investment management strategy and policy, ensuring that readiness is addressed so that we do not continue to pay commitment fees when loans have been contracted, which is actually a drain on our resources. Imagine if the big infrastructure projects that we've set out to embark on and loans have been already contracted, but the projects have not yet started. That's really a dilemma that we live in. But we thank government and Ministry of Finance that there's also realization from the side of government that that should stop. And like the President of the Republic of Uganda says, this is Chisanja, no sleep. And I hope we leave the talk. And Honorable Minister, this dialogue is also critical because just a few days, just on 22nd of this month, Right Honorable Rebecca Kadaga tabled the budget, the EAC budget, and it's really an ambitious budget, up to the tune of $110.9 million US, and there are a number of priorities that have been set out. So what I would like to emphasize here is that as members of the East African community, we have set out national priorities, and the region has also set out regional priorities. So how then do we harmonize national and regional priorities so that the budgets, the respective national budgets, are also in line with the regional priorities, so that the EAC region does not remain at the level of the presidents, but it trickles down to the ministries, to the agencies, and to the citizens. In fact, citizens should even be at the center of the EAC. We talk about EAC regional integration, its potential, how the EAC is the fastest growing region, but one lived reality remains. There are challenges. Even the professionals within Uganda find some challenges practicing like lawyers, practicing in a few of these EAC countries. So those are issues that should be addressed so that the region and the spirit of regional integration lives among citizens beyond just the leaders. So, Honorable Minister and distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I will spare you the so many details I would have delved into, but without further ado, I would like to take this opportunity to invite the Deputy Head of Cooperation, Embassy of Ireland in Uganda, and Honorable Minister, before the Deputy Head of Cooperation, Embassy of Ireland in Uganda, makes her way here. Siatini is receiving a lot of support from Embassy of Ireland in Uganda, and the support is around interventions that are contributing to the second domestic revenue mobilization strategy. And the project we're implementing with the support of Embassy of Ireland is really around sustaining tax and revenue improvements for development. And the Embassy of Ireland is undertaking a number of interventions in different regions, and one of the model regions is the Karamoja sub-region, where the support has really been enormous around the education sector. And this dialogue is really made possible also because of support from Tax Justice Network, Africa, and also support from Diaconia. And we truly appreciate all the domestic resource mobilization partners that joined us virtually. And with us, Honorable Minister, we have a member of Siatini Board of Trustees, Professor Mambusi Andebesa. He's right there. And among the distinguished stakeholders we have here, we also have local government leaders and representatives. We have members of parliament. We also have the Tax Justice Alliance Uganda members. We also have the East African Tax and Governance Network members. We have the Media Fraternity. We have the Siatini team. We have representatives from the academia and a number of other stakeholders, including the private sector. Thank you so much. I would like now to welcome the Deputy Head of Corporation. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Good morning. My name is Basundra Tripathi Furlong. I'm the Deputy Head of Cooperation at the Embassy of Ireland in Uganda. Today I'm deputising for the Ambassador. She sends her regards. She's in Karamoja this morning working on a health programme that we have there. I'll start with recognising the dignitaries present here. Right Honourable Minister of State for East African Community Affairs, honourable members of Parliament present, the Permanent Secretary, also the Secretary to the Treasury, Deputy Executive Director Siatini, representatives of the East African Community Secretariat, representatives of the Uganda Revenue Authority, representatives of the ministries, agencies and departments, civil society organisations present, National Budget Month partners, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great honour to address you and deliver opening remarks on this East African Community Post-Budget Dialogue for financial year 2026-2027. I commend the National Budget Month partners, led by the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, for convening this meeting. In line with the theme of today's dialogue, I have the privilege of sharing Ireland's experience and best practice in domestic revenue mobilisation. According to the Millennium Challenge Corporation, domestic resource mobilisation, or DRM, is the process by which a country generates and manages its own financial resources, primarily through taxation, savings and capital markets, to fund public services and economic development. DRM aims at reducing a government's reliance on foreign aid and international debt. Strong DRM is widely considered as the backbone of a country's state capacity and sustainable development. Key aspects of DRM include tax policy and administration, the social contract, combating illicit flows, and data and analytics. Right Honourable Minister, I'll focus on taxation in the rest of my remarks. The Government of Ireland, in its guidance note on taxation and development, notes that an efficient and fair tax system is necessary to improve the business environment and to raise revenue for sustainable social programmes, poverty reduction and provision of services. Effective taxation provides a reliable source of revenue needed to promote growth and sustainable development. However, many countries struggle to reach appropriate levels of revenue due to inefficient tax policies, underperforming tax administrations, and low taxpayer compliance. Effective and fair tax systems are a crucial building block for increasing domestic resource mobilisation. Even with deficiencies in tax collection, domestic revenue has raised around 10 times more financing for Africa than development assistance. In the current context of increasing uncertainty and rapidly declining development assistance, greater attention is now turning to domestic resource mobilisation. This dialogue, therefore, comes at no better time. Allow me now to briefly reflect on Ireland's experience in DRM and draw out features that have shaped that experience. While Ireland's context may be unique, there are valuable insights that are relevant to our discussion today. Among the factors that have shaped Ireland's DRM journey are an independent revenue authority, EU membership, using taxation for development, a highly progressive tax system, and very strong stakeholder engagement. First, after gaining independence in 1922, Ireland established an independent office of the Revenue Commissioners in 1923. Since then, successive governments and parliaments have reaffirmed the principle of the independence of the Revenue Commissioners in their dealings with the tax affairs of any individuals, businesses, or other entities under tax and customs legislation. This has been critical to maintaining the integrity of the taxation system and has formed a key pillar of revenues governance work. Second, joining the EU. In 1973, this led to the abolition of incompatible taxes like Export Sales Relief Scheme, which provided full corporation tax exemptions for manufacturing companies exporting from Ireland and had been in place from 1958. Joining the EU also led to introduction of value-added tax or VAT to align with the rest of Europe. Moreover, membership of the EU Monetary Union has enforced fiscal discipline as all member states regard their economic policies as a matter of common rather than individual concern. Third, Ireland has used a relatively low headline rate of corporation tax as a central part of its economic model. A reduced rate of 10% for manufacturing, introduced in Finance Act of 1980, supported foreign direct investment inflows. Between 1998 and 2003, Ireland introduced a 12.5% corporation tax rate on trading profits and a 25% rate on non-trading profits, such as passive income. As a result of its economic policy, Ireland has become a global technology and pharmaceutical hub. Fourth, in 2011, in the aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis, Ireland introduced the universal social charge as it sought to widen the personal income tax base. The USC is a broad, progressive tax on gross income, which applies in addition to the standard income tax and is paid by all those whose gross annual income exceeds €13,000. As a result, Ireland consistently ranks among the top 3 most progressive tax systems in the OECD, with the top 10% of earners in Ireland paying 60% of the taxes. Fifth, strong stakeholder engagement is one of the hallmarks of Ireland's tax policy. Stakeholder engagements between the Department of Finance, Revenue, and taxpayers, business associations, and tax practitioners are used to shape tax policy, refine legislation, and prevent unintended economic impacts before annual finance bills. These stakeholder engagements are structured through four channels: Business Tax Stakeholder Forum, joint public consultations, commissions and roadmaps, and feedback statements. As I conclude, I'd like to highlight Ireland's continued commitment to strengthening the tax administrative capacity in developing countries. In 2019, Ireland launched the whole-of-government approach to DRM as an initiative to coordinate expertise across 3 primary government entities: the Department of Finance, Office of the Revenue Commissioners, and the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. The Department of Finance advises on tax policy design and macro-fiscal strategies. The Office of the Revenue Commissioners provides peer-to-peer technical assistance, training, and operational capacity building. And the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, where I work, it aligns DRM capacity building with Ireland's broader international development and sustainable development goals. The whole-of-government approach is a key pillar of Ireland's development cooperation. The goal is to establish a governance dividend, where reliable, fairly collected taxes improve a government's democratic accountability and public trust. Key activities under this approach include capacity building and training, under which Irish revenue officials deliver training abroad and host foreign delegations to share expertise in areas like risk-based audits, data analytics, and taxpayer education. I am happy to inform distinguished participants that there is an ongoing institutional partnership between the Office of the Revenue Commissioners and Uganda Revenue Authority since 2024. Multilateral partnerships where Ireland scales its impact by co-funding and collaborating with major international bodies including the IMF, the World Bank and the African Tax Administration Forum. In summary, Ireland's taxation system has evolved drastically, shifting from heavy reliance on trade tariffs in the early 20th century to a modern knowledge-based economy. Today, the Irish taxation system operates a highly centralized digital system and relies on three main pillars for most of its revenue: income tax and USC, VAT, and a 12.5% corporation tax on trading profits for companies, subject to 15% global minimum tax for in-scope multinational enterprises. Ireland's own journey in DRM reminds us that lasting reform is built patiently, over decades, through independence, fairness, and trust earned. The Irish Nobel laureate Seamus Heaney wrote of a moment when hope and history rhyme. The dialogue we have shared today is part of the long, deliberate work of making that rhyme possible across the East African community, and Ireland is proud to walk that road alongside you. Thank you all for listening.
That hand clap is for Ugandan. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Ireland. Talking tax, talking development, talking foreign affairs. I like the one government concept. I expected at least so many things under one government concept. Just three. They do matter. Paul, you will be coming to tell us in the panel later, do we have a tax policy? We just have tax ideas that we keep chasing. And then we give you the mantle to implement what is very difficult. But thank you very much for the remarks. Siatini will help me not to commit a crime to steal her remarks. So please make sure I get a copy of them, because we want to have a good conversation on those remarks and see what can we learn from the Irish. We usually eat Irish here, but you are safe. We'll not be putting you in our menu. We eat Irish that grows in the ground. Honorable Awol Betty, woman representative for Gulu, you're welcome. Happy to see you. That confirms to us that Karuma Bridge is still there. Sometimes I wake up and they tell me, no, you have to go through the other side. But if she's here, then it is on. None of us has, from Siatini, the host, has the authority and the shoes to invite the Honorable Minister. So I'm going to chip it higher and invite the Director. Professor Ndebesa, where are you? It can only be you to invite the Minister. The rest of us, our shoes, Nigina from downtown. So please come and do the needful. And invite the Minister who is going to give us a keynote. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome, dear participants and the Honorable Minister. Ndebesa is my name, and I am here as a member of the Board of Trustees, but until recently, actually, I was the chairman of the Board of Governors for Siatini. My role here is to invite the Minister to give his keynote address, but before I do that, maybe I should just chip in to give you what informs Siatini as an NGO under the think tank. Our core mandate and interest and value is promoting social justice. And yes, tax can be a tool for development, which it should be, but it should also be a tool for promoting social justice and equality. When you talk about efficiency and effectiveness of tax management, I add on equity, another E. If we don't promote equality through taxation and other methods and other policies, in the East African region where here the level of inequality is increasing every other day, it is very unfortunate. Inequality is increasing globally, inequality is increasing even regionally, and even in Uganda. And I want to caution the world and Uganda here that inequality poses an existential threat to security. As long as we don't address the question of equality, there will be insecurity. So inequality is actually a threat to security. And therefore, we should use tax as a tool for social justice as much as it is a tool for development, but it can also be a tool for sovereignty. How can a country which does not mobilize, or a region that does not mobilize its domestic resources, continue relying on foreign resources? It will lose its sovereignty. So we must pay attention to the question also of efficiency, effectiveness, and equity in resource mobilization. In this case, we are talking about tax. So therefore, at Siatini, we are concerned that tax in Uganda and in the region is mainly regressive tax. It's not progressive tax. It is taxing consumption rather than taxing income. And when you tax income, when you tax, you concentrate, you prioritize taxing the consumption, you are actually taxing the poor more than those who are rich. And therefore, you will not be in line with taxation for social justice. With those few remarks, ladies and gentlemen, I take this opportunity to invite the guest of honor, Honorable Magode Ikuya, Minister of State for East African Community Affairs, to come and give his keynote address, and then we move on with our program. You are welcome once again. I am welcoming you on behalf of the Board of Trustees of Siatini. Honorable Minister, sir, you are welcome. And I want to, where are there stairs here? Yes. I prefer that you are welcome, Honorable Minister, to give us the perspective of the East African community from there, sir. Yeah, to give us the perspective of the regional perspective on taxation and all these tools that we have assigned taxation. You are welcome, Honorable Minister. The floor is yours, sir.
Asante muno.
Asante.
The respected professor who is representing, I think, the Board of, is it Board of Trustees of Siatini, the deputy head of the mission, Uganda mission of Ireland, Uganda, honorable members of parliament, if any, from East African Legislative Assembly who are here, members of parliament, all the various officials from Ministry of Finance and government agencies, development partners, civil society fraternity, academia, members of the press, all distinguished guests in all your protocols. I've come here to represent the first Deputy Prime Minister, who is also the Minister of East African Affairs, who happens unfortunate to have been away. She would have wanted herself to have possibly made these remarks because she was the invited person. But in her absence, due to very understandable circumstances you have already hinted to, she's on other duties. Therefore, she mentioned it to me to step in and just sketch some few highlights over the ideas she would have wanted to share with you. I'm hoping that when circumstances come, she herself will be given another opportunity, possibly to give a deeper insight into some of the things she would have presented. It so happens that she happens to be not only the Minister for East African Affairs, she's actually currently the chairperson of the Council of Ministers. Therefore, who is very ably engaged in managing and steering the EAC up to date. She's really the current chairperson, and she's most qualified to have raised a few things which you anticipated. But that as it may be, I have therefore, I just want to raise a few sketches, hints, because I can't go into the, I noticed that you are discussing a very big and wide subject called the taxation and all the forbidding things which go with taxation. It's a world of its own, and those without particular faculties in that subject may find it difficult to be, actually we find ourselves forbidden from even raising an issue there. Actually forbidden, because it is very, very specialized. However, because of the fact that we are supposed to have discussed the highlights of the EAC budget, which of 2026-227, and with the interest of mainly showing what is supposed to prepare. And in the course of that, to mention some of the constraints that have arisen in the yet unrealized monetary union. You know, the mere fact that we are not yet a monetary union has itself had an impact on the kind of budgeting you do, and therefore it influences or diverts us from achieving many other objectives. That's really what I want to deal with. And that's why possibly this is how we understood the topic was the keynote address we should have presented. Now, one, in order to understand the 2026 and 2027 budget, it is always necessary to stress, first of all, always bear that in mind. Why the East African community in the first place? Why do we have to budget for it? What is its objective which you have? And unless it is correctly well placed, then the budget itself may not be well read. Its meaning, you can just go into statistics and even argue on them on intellectual discourse and disquisitions, but the impact on society would be very disorienting. That's why we normally stress that our footage on the purpose must be the purpose of forming the East African community. The political objectives must always be borne in mind. And we understand it as a process. This EAC is a process of completing the struggle of the African people for liberation against colonial control. So it is not just a pleasure, it's not just a pleasure walk. It was formed out of a purpose that the African people cannot be free anywhere in Africa unless the whole of Africa is free from colonial control. And in order to enable that freedom to be realized, you must also gain a scale of unity which enables you to disengage from the previous control and consequently sew back what the colonial administrations had ripped apart in Africa. And this has got to be borne in mind. So the unity which you therefore warrior want is to enable Africans first to tie back Africa to themselves. Because the colonial situation linked Africans from everything, even from themselves. Congo, for example, became very far from Uganda because it was more easily linked to Belgium than to Uganda. And Uganda also became linked to Britain than to Congo. And therefore, people who are staying just in border, the same community across there, were separate. And lived. So even the travel distance to go to Kinshasa, by then it was called Leopoldville, to get there, you had to, from Entebbe, you had to go through London, Belgium, that's Brussels, and back to Leopoldville. That is the distance. The people of Africa were put apart, ripped apart. So you are no longer the same. That's one. Then you are linked even from the resources. Even the resources of your countries became available only to those who are masters and became linked from even the resources and just looked on as the promised land, the land which you will never get to. That's what I think the Bible says of Moses. He said, yeah, you see that land is promised, but you will never get there. So this is what happened to the Africans. They linked even from political control, any form of control, culture, everything. It's a subject which we will take long to discuss. So I will leave it that one. But I just want to hint at that. So therefore, the strands which we are trying to bring together are those which will enable us to get the African body to begin functioning normally so that it can rediscover itself and rejuvenate and regrow. The Africa we want must regrow from the ruins that had been there. And I wish you had spent more time, you Africans who are my fellow Africans, take more time on this because these are issues. So the treaty for establishing the formation of EAC structures rested on the desire by states to ensure linkages which would bring togetherness of scale for economic, political, and cultural betterment of the African people. That is really the objective. Naturally, the realization of the magnitude of these ambitions could not be done merely by going to raid Uganda, in the case of Uganda. You don't just go to proclaim it with effect from midnight to night. That's what Idi Amin will do. With effect from midnight to night, we are now united. With effect from this, no more dancing. That is how decisions are sometimes made. But these ones of unity of the African people cannot be done by that, however much willing you are. Why? Because the strands which you already decapitated have got to be put back carefully together before you can realize. That's why the reuniting Africa is a process. It cannot be mere proclamation. It's a process. It was imperative to reconnect and practically rebuild the tissues and which colonial control had ripped apart so that new organs may emerge for the needed well-being of East Africans and even Africans as a whole, because the East African is just a stepping stone. This is why so far the following policies and structures are in operation, marking the big stride in the peak journey. We can mention some few here. My ministry had prepared to me some good speech here, which is long, I'm not relying on it. So there is a key pillars of integration. The customs union, the common market. I think it is intended for monetary union also, and the political federation. This is the eventual destination. Now we have so far done implementation of the single custom territory effective, the establishment of a competition authority 2016. That is now effective. Construction and operationalization of the one-stop border post. That one, anybody who now comes to Congo, I think there's Mpondwe, Kenya, you can see even towards Tanzania, it's now effective. So you do not have to go through too many offices to do the same thing of either moving goods or even body movement. Adoption of a common external tariff, which is currently under review with this following tariff bands. I think I will not go into that. All rules of origin certificates have been centralized and are currently being issued by URA. Now, therefore, to do many of those things, there have been organs created within the EAC, which undertake these objectives, or which have undertaken. We have achieved some, but not yet others. So on the security, immigration, I think there is the Lake Victoria Basin Organization. We have the Swahili program for ensuring that we can at least have an African language operating within our own environment. It is very embarrassing often for Africans to have to communicate through the medium of other languages in order to speak to themselves. There are times when you go elsewhere and you find you are Ugandans, you can't backbite an Englishman in England. You want to talk about him, but which language now? Use English, and you don't have any other thing to do. So you don't look therefore very, very African. Then we have the EAC Secretariat, which is supposed to organize that. The Council of Ministers, the legislative function is done by the EAC, the judiciary, and of course the summit. These are some of the organs. Now, quite naturally, this must be funded in order to operationalize them, to keep them working on the same things which have attained, and at the same time towards the common objectives. So the other actions which are underway, monetary union, we have not yet achieved that. We are writing a constitution for EAC Federation, and I hope the professor is ably participating in that. I don't know whether he has reported that to you, because some of them are the ones who are the professors and the knowledgeable people are supposed to help us in this. Now, the funding of these wide activities is the basis of the EAC budget to sustain organs already in place and fund the oncoming of the new others. Even the new others must be funded. We must begin piecemeal funding of them. The figures are generally to ensure that you have staff emoluments, administrative expenses, program implementation, infrastructural requirements, and development agenda, and so on and so on. But there are, however, challenges. Although the EAC membership has grown to numbers of 8 countries, some people have been coveting that, said, oh, you're moving. Some of the members do not always meet the obligations. Despite our boasting that we have got bigger members, we don't even meet their own obligations towards maintaining even this small structure that we have already started, leading to mounting pressures on smooth operation of the EAC. That's one pressure which you really notice. And consequently, sometimes people then where development partners to help us to do this and this. So that is one area. Of course, the formula for funding of EAC has also been stressful to some countries. The funding I think before that was supposed to be based on some GDP calculations and the fact that you're a state, we must make obligatory contributions. But then now it has been discovered that some states are small, too small, tiny little things. Others are huge and are benefiting from even what you are calling the community. They are benefiting even more. Others are huge. Others are very bad, much poorer than before. The terrain is not even. Others are on high mountains, others are on low valleys. But if you subject them to the same thing, you create a stress. So that is one area which has so it brings delinquency. Observing EAC common markets, and therefore you begin now getting trade unilateralism. Other countries, even within the EAC, you create protocols which are agreed as protocols. But then within the very people who have signed the protocols, others will go and begin signing other protocols which undermine the same protocols on which you are. Because they are also compelled to try to survive under different circumstances, including with other trade blocs. You have, for example, a common tariff within we have agreed the formula for doing certain things. But others can gamble if you get a good, favorable circumstances, get a particular deal for one country against the others. So all those kind of things create stress. Now, at its last meeting, the EAC summit made some decision to ameliorate the increasing lapses. Now, remittances from member states were now more rationalized to ensure that while we can have some basic contribution from each member state, other things must also be variable. So there's some variable method of gaining member states, getting member states from. So those which are a bit better off ought to contribute more, and those which require some help. But this is the common African thing, really. If you like me, if you cannot walk through there, you must be helping me to do so. That's not something we can debate about. Eh? Otherwise, if I can't, how will you fulfill the same journey? If you who is able, you just run along and you have left me alone, how can the journey be common? So in order to have a common journey, there must be common precepts for doing it. So that's how it was done. Then they discounted some areas from some of those countries which had not yet made contributions to encourage them on what is possible for them for the time being. So on the agreed formula, every country henceforth was supposed to fulfill the obligation they accepted to undertake by the end of this month. So we should be this to prompt compliance, more compliance by all states, so that nobody should be getting mounting thing from this. Because others actually have tended to, because of that inability, they only take part in what is a common advantage to them. What is advantageous? For example, if there are positions to be fulfilled, or to be occupied by each country, they come to occupy. We must also have our own there, they occupy. But if it is to make money, then you are the ones who now pay are the ones who have to pay for the occupation of these places. So we're now saying, no, this is not fair. So henceforth, for example, the members of EALA, the East African Legislative Assembly, the payment of their dues must be shouldered by the states themselves. Each state should follow, so that should not fall on the EAC Secretariat. So that's how to eliminate some of the excessive neglect by other members to pay their contributions. So we rationalizing and streamlining budget support by development partners and stakeholders. Even that one needs to come to some form of rationalization, because the budget support by development sector is there really free will. So there are those who can also offer free will while also wanting to only attain only certain particular objectives, but which conflict with other objectives. So we want to make sure that all these are harmonized, so that henceforth we work together for common things. So that's really what are the challenges on the budget. But in order to ensure that these objectives can lead us eventually to monetary union, it's also important that we must continue with the common programs which enable us write the constitution and fulfill that. Monetary union is also part of the problem. The language of the African people, Swahili Commission, needs to be well spread so that it does its work, and the education system must be linked to the region so that you can have the same direction rather than each one. There are times when we have been doing more argument about whether we have actually been arguing more about European languages than about ourselves. There have been of the official languages now have been put as French and English. Certainly the Swahili is also now there. But it's up to the population also to begin arguing. Why Lingala cannot make sense when we dance to its music. Where other languages too can be defended, and they form part of the uniting of the African people. These are issues which are political, and each country must be able to handle that. So, in conclusion, the EAC journey has certainly not been without bumpiness from rough spots. Certainly there is no genuine journey which can take place or which starts pursuing a passion of life but which has no expectation of some roughness on the way. If you just go to this, not every journey has got to be a smooth ride. But we are convinced that so far there is already overwhelming unanimity by the EAC summit that we must press on towards the East African community goals. So far, no country in Africa, East Africa, whatever the stress we are undergoing, including security, whatnot, no one has yet come to say he wants to opt out. So that's already a beginning. Everybody is committed. All the members of the summit are committed. So that is an implacable strength by which to keep the hope for marching on. Therefore, we should not entertain fear for the EAC, whatever its circumstances. Because if you did entertain fear for every problem that there could be, then we would not even be able to come here. Because you would find that in the process of my coming here, I found the traffic jam is also a headache. Some people may experience the petrol bills, may find what. So if you begin with the headaches which you have on the way, is not the problem. The problem is the fulfillment of a mission. So we should not fear unity and its problems. What we should fear is recoiling from it. What we should fear is the fear of recoiling. Those who have fears are the ones whom we should fear. Those who have fears, every time, every the problem, they are having problems with it. So it is why we in the East African community are convinced that our road is correct, and we shall press on with our development partners, with everybody who is willing to carry on, and with the population of Uganda. So that the pressure by the people, the combined will of the people, the states, but development partners can help us to overcome all the problems that we are having. So I thank you for listening to me, and I hope that in the next near future, the first deputy herself will be able to come and give you further insight. Thank you very much. This is a long one. Eh? I'm looking at this. It's long.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Another round of applause for the Minister. Minister, we want you to stand here so that we can take a photo with you just in front here as you come back to your seat. And the Minister is going to be joined by the Deputy Head of Corporation. You'll join the Minister, the board member. Please come and join the Minister. But you can't miss out on this one. Honorable members of Parliament in the House, this is where you belong. These are your colleagues, and we want to have that photo. And then later on we'll be able without tiring the Minister, I want to invite my panelists to come and join on in this photo. Paul, you want to come in and be part of this? Madam Justin from URA. Hilda, why don't you come and join? This is a panelist photo, and then we'll let the Minister do what ministers do. Hilda is coming. Wait. Somebody is coming to join us. Aloysius, where are you? We don't want to keep the minister standing for long, so let's take this quickly. The rest of us will have our photos later. Honorable Minister has been standing for some time. We want him to have his seat, and Honorable Minister, at any one time, you will convey our regards to the First Deputy Prime Minister, who is really always part of us. Ladies and gentlemen, we are progressing well. We are going to get into a conversation by the panel. In your program, you may have two panels, but we're going to have them merged. I want to invite Paul Lakoma. You come and take a seat. You will be representing Moses Kagwa, the Director of Economic Affairs. I know you work so closely with each other, so I don't need the DNA test here to prove that your views and his views merge to that level. He will be speaking to us about progress made by the EAC partner states towards tax harmonization. So you'll have an initial round to give that, and then we'll get into the rest of the conversations. Justin Namusabi, is that the name? Representing the Uganda Revenue Authority, will be talking to us about tax administration challenges and practical solutions for enhancing domestic resource mobilization within the EAC. Did I get the name right? Okay. I want also to invite Hilda Tumuhe, the policy analyst for data and aid at CIATIN, will be joining us and will be telling us about progress towards attainment of macroeconomic convergence in the EAC, giving us a civil society perspective. We have another panelist online who will be coming in ahead of these ones. Who will be joining us online, called Francine Rutazana, the chairperson of the IALA Committee on Trade and Communication. I hope the people in the IT, you are in touch, because that person is going to come in first. I want to recognize Miara Miria Iris Ocho, Assistant Commissioner, Tax Education Strategy and Risk Management Department from the Uganda Revenue Authority. Strategy and Risk. Quite an interesting office that you hold. Eh? We are the risk part, you are the strategy part. We like it that way. Keep us in your risk, but also keep in our strategy out there. The people online, the people holding out, are we able to get Honorable Francine Rutazana? Honorable, can you hear us? Can you see us? We want to see you, want to hear you. The water before you is for drinking, it's not for decoration. Make sure you drink it. It is a bit hot. We don't want you to remember that cost you're going to incur started here. The medical people may want to make some money out of you. After all, the Irish have told us they are masters of a pharmaceutical industry. We don't want to start supporting that industry from today, or you can do it elsewhere and later on. But I think you begin to see how development happens. They have developed their pharmaceutical industry not by charging the government budget. They only provided the incentives, and the private sector responded. These are lessons we want to pick from our friends and partners. IT people, are we ready? If we are not ready, we can as well start our conversations here. Once we are ready, we'll get on with them. So, Paul, we have said you are going to be sharing with us progress made by EAC partner states towards tax harmonization, the perspective of the Ministry of Finance, which is definitely the perspective of the government. Paul.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Honorable Minister, and the rest of the guests. Yes, as you know, tax harmonization is key, as the Minister mentioned in his speech, in regard to eliminate distortions, but also facilitate cross-border trade, but also enhance tax compliance and enforcement, but also make sure that businesses are operating in a very predictable and simple tax system, which will enhance the region's viability as a single investment destination. Should I begin with the bad part or the good part? Probably let me begin with the bad part. We have not made a lot of progress in regard to this for some tax heads. Let me begin with income tax. Income tax, we were supposed to, first of all, harmonize the rate. I'm told Rwanda is at 28% statutory rate. Uganda is at 30%. Kenya has multiple rates depending on the investments you're making. Tanzania has a lower rate. I think we have the highest rate of 30% statutory rate. That doesn't mean that is the effective rate. And also when it comes to the withholding or the passive incomes, the ones Ireland mentioned that they tax passive incomes very heavily. Here in Uganda, it's the opposite, as Dr. Mumuza mentioned earlier, because we wanted to encourage people to pursue equity as opposed to debt, to diversify the financing frameworks, move away from debt towards equity, and also develop the equity market. That's why we set the taxation rates for the equity segment to be much lower than the statutory rates for the normal income, for the active income, where you are really very involved in your business. So for the passive income, we have lower withholding rates as a final tax of about 15% for shares, for treasury bills and stuff like that. All the other income in the equity market, whenever they are paid, debentures, dividends, those ones we tax them at a lower rate of 15. These rates also differ across the region, and that creates also, it violates the objectives which I mentioned earlier of eliminating distortions, facilitating cross-border trade, but also ensuring that the environment, the business environment, is predictable. When it comes to excise duty, there's some good news. Some of the products within the excise duty regime, such as alcohol, tobacco, the traditional ones, alcohol, tobacco, and sugary drinks, are pretty much harmonized across the region. In terms of scope, all the East Africa partner states have the same, all of them have a common product. These three common products cut across. So what do you call that in sets, where there's a union? Do you call them union? It's a union of sets. Where, yeah? It's a what? Intersection. Yes, it's an intersection of sets. So we intersect in regard to those three products: tobacco, sugar, and alcohol. But the scope could differ according to countries. And this is mostly driven by the need to mobilize revenue, where excess duty deviates from the primary objective of being a tax which addresses externalities. And then the tax is more driven towards revenue mobilization. So we do have some strange products for Uganda. We have water, we have cement. Though some people may argue that clinker, the elements which go into cement, do have some, they do pollute the environment. So they need to account for that externality. But given that we are a developing country, and we have development objectives, maybe cement should not be part of the excess duty scope. So for us, we have cement, we have water, and about 20 elements. Another thing which is common is that the scope is quite limited for the 5 East African countries. But the rates do differ. Some are specific, others have a mix of specific and ad valorem rates. Ad valorem here I mean percentages. Like Uganda, we have a mix of specific and ad valorem. For some other countries, these rates could differ from 1% to 12%. We do have a 12% on telecom here. Telecom also is it's arguable whether it should be an accessible good. Again, you find in other, like in Kenya, telecom is not, access duty doesn't apply to what? To telecom. So there's need to harmonize that across the countries. But as I mentioned, health and revenue mobilization and other objectives may be driving the differences in the scope of excess duty. I'll go straight to VAT. VAT, in the first instance, the threshold, the exemption threshold, is not harmonized across the region. Now, starting a few days from now, maybe 6 days from now, we will have a threshold of 300 million, yeah? Which is about 80,000 US dollars. Kenya is at 40. That is previously where we are. Rwanda has a lower threshold, about 20,000 US dollars. So there's need to harmonize the threshold also across the different countries. Also the rates, as you know, we have a rate of 18. Kenya has a rate of 16. I heard there were plans for Kenya to come and harmonize with us, come at 18. Rwanda has a 16, I think. Tanzania has 16. Kenya wants to harmonize with us, so it has made steps towards that harmonization. So we need also to harmonize these rates, because it makes the, as I mentioned, the other, remember the 4 objectives I mentioned of minimizing distortion, enhancing enforcement and compliance, but also making the region to be predictable, a predictable place to do business, but also facilitate cross-border trade when these things are harmonized. The final tax, which one have I not mentioned? I've mentioned VAT, excess duty, income tax. There are other fees and rates which are charged, and this also creates price distortion across the region for the different products. There's also need to eliminate those fees going forward. When it comes to treaties, of course we have a treaty between us, between the EAC itself is a treaty. We have that treaty, but there are countries which belong to several other treaties, and that also creates another distortion. Some of us are in COMESA. Tanzania is not part of COMESA. Tanzania is part of SADC. Somalia could be belonging to IGAD, and a couple of members are not members of IGAD. So there are that cross membership across the different regional economic communities, which also can create distortion. in the business environment, and we need to also discuss that issue. Now, let me go to the good news. The good news is what is the EAC, Common External Tariff, and EACMA under the 5th schedule, which has created harmonization, which the minister tried to mention, but he jumped it in his speech. We have a 10% rate for we have a 10% rate for raw material. I'm thinking, yeah, am I right? Yes, we have 0 duty on import of raw material. We have 10% on imports of intermediate, and we have 25% duty on finished goods, which are not readily available in the market. And then we charge 35 for finished goods which are available. If you bring something which is already available here, there's a common external tariff of 35%. If you bring something which we don't have, but it's a finished good, we will charge you 25. If you bring something which is an intermediate good, an input for, it's not yet a final good, we will charge you 10%, and then 0% for most of the agricultural products and raw material. That is harmonized across the region. That's the good news, so we can clap for ourselves there. We have made an achievement there. Though, there are escape clauses which are provided in those rules. One is remission. You can ask in an interministerial meeting to not charge that rate. You can also ask for stay of application, mainly to address issues of capacity to produce those raw materials, or industrial objectives. Like you know, we are now, Uganda particularly, we are trying to build state capacity, and one aspect of state capacity is having a very active industrial policy. The PSST is very passionate about this. He has written very many articles about this, and this is something we are pursuing. So sometimes we deviate from the rules which are set in the CET, but with permission of the Interministerial Council through remission and the stay of application. Thank you. I'll give others now a chance to speak.
Yes, the clapping is for the good news, but also for information about the bad news. And also the Honorable Minister was kind enough to leave that bit for you, because if he said it now, you would have had nothing to say. So the Minister, thank you very much for allowing our staff to make a contribution. But as he said, these are technical things for you to weave them into the entire conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to recognize Honorable Hope G. Nakaziwe, the woman member of Parliament for Mubende District. You're welcome. We had already talked about your road, so we understand how you easily or not easily reach your people. Honorable Bagole John Bosco, MP for Luka North in Luka District. You're welcome, Right Honorable. Honorable Owino Simon Nicholas, Tororo County North. So I want to believe there is Tororo County South. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that English is very, very specific, because if you're talking of Luka North, it ends there. But if you bring a county first, then it is split up. There is north and there is south. But the other one is Luka North, and it ends there. Maybe there will soon be a county coming before, so that there is north and south Luka. I hope we don't get there, because that will mean a lot more expenditures on honorable members of Parliament. But maybe the representation will dictate that. There are issues we'll follow up with Luka that I picked from Kasita on these issues of finished products not available, finished products available. The traders downtown have different interpretations and views on when I bring a fabric and Muhumza needs a suit from this fabric. So this fabric available so that we charge 25. It's finished, but really it's not available, because this is a Pakistani-made brand. Uganda can't make it. Or are you going to say it's a finished product and it's available, so we charge 35%? These are the details we throw to URA. Compliance. These guys can set things up there, and it is up to you to go and interpret with the traders on whether this is available or actually not available. These are compliance issues, and Justin is going to take us through that, what the tax administration challenges and practical solutions for enhancing domestic resource mobilization within the EAC, and anything else that my friend the Commissioner General asked you to say. But let's begin with this one that Siatini and the organizers want us to hear. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And it's also good that I'm speaking after my boss, having ushered in part of the work which is being done. But now looking at our mandate, you see they set the policies, we implement. And the hardest work is on our side. Because as we are talking now, we have been given a mandate of collecting 49 trillion in the financial year 2026-2027. So when you're looking at that, how do you ensure that? There are key variables which have to be in place. So we are looking at expanding the tax base digitally. You know, of recent we have the Generation X, the Gen Zs, and the mode of operation is changing from the traditional cargo movement across. It has now gone electronic or e-commerce. So how do you tap into that? Those are areas which we are looking into, that we need to tap into the e-commerce. Because most of the people, if you look downtown, the shops, some of them are closed, and you don't find physical presence of some of the goods. You see there is Jumia, there is eBay, there is so many, as the Generation X can attest. So how do you look into that? We are trying to venture into other areas other than the traditional movement. Then we look at the leakages, sealing the leakages. There is a lot which is coming. Remember, Uganda, for example, is a country with porous borders. And much as we have presence in some of the borders, you find that there are places whereby there is some bit of running. So, like my minister was saying, that he cannot run marathon, but in some of the places, we have to do some bit of running to at least ensure that we have presence in the different porous borders. Because look at our border alone with the DRC. The biggest part is mainly water. And when you look at, there is no infrastructure which is really well defined. So you find that it is an area which has to be looked into to improve or to cover those leakages. Then we have harmonizing regional frameworks. He talked of regional. We are talking of operating, for example, customs, we talk of the common external tariff. But also we have what we call the elimination of internal tariffs. Of course, common is for goods coming outside the community. But now within the community, if you see, for example, our biggest partner when it comes to agricultural produce has been South Sudan. But most of the tomatoes, eggs, and all that move towards South Sudan, and eggs move towards DR Congo. But then you find that as much as Uganda is an agricultural country, we also have a lot of rice, which is coming in from Tanzania. So if you look at Mutukula, most of the incoming goods is mainly, when you see those trucks, the ones coming from the east is cement. But when you see trucks coming from Masaka side into Kampala, and they are covered with the tarpaulins, in most cases that is rice. So Tanzania has taken on a comparative advantage, and I think they are capitalizing on production of rice. Like we say, Uganda, we are the sugar producer in the region. So you find that some of those, you have to harmonize the regional framework. So in looking at that, we have challenges. For example, my boss here was talking of the different rates. Goods transferred from within the partner states, when it comes to import duty, is 0. But we have other taxes which are applicable. For example, goods entering Kenya, they have a seaport. We are a land-linked country. So you find that the additional cost of transporting goods from Mombasa to Kampala, that is an additional cost, makes the cost of the landed goods here a bit higher. Then you find that Kenya, on top of that, they don't charge the withholding tax. Uganda, we charge 6% withholding tax. So on the same products coming in, they charge 16% VAT, we are charging 18% VAT. On top of that, just adding, when you add 18 plus 6, already you on what? 24. Then when you add on, we have a 1% import declaration fee. I don't think that one is being charged the other end. So it makes our tax a bit higher on the same goods which are being sold within the same market. Then we have the infrastructure development levy 1.5, which is for all partner states, looking at, he talked of the standard gauge rail. So that one is looking into that, but we are all looking at that. But now when you see, for them when they are charging the goods, it's like FOB, Mombasa. But ours, we are using CIF and you are adding in an extra, much as when you're valuing, we don't include that, but when they are pricing the goods to you in the market, you have to put the component of the freight from Mombasa to Kampala. And interestingly, you may find that the cost of transporting a container from Mombasa to Kampala may even be higher than moving a 20-feet container from Dubai to Mombasa. So you find that it makes it slightly higher, and when they are costing, it becomes an issue. Then we have the cross-border trade, the cross-border challenge. We talked of porous borders, but you remember we have partners who are at different levels of development. DR Congo, South Sudan. The rate of tax which is paid in Sudan could be 5% of the cost. Meanwhile here, we are having it beyond. Remember, if you are importing some items like milk, we are a milk producing country. So Uganda has a 60% import duty to protect, because we have enough milk here in Uganda. Why should you import milk, needle from the Netherlands into Uganda? Yet we have variety of milk here. So you find that in the bid of that protection. But interestingly, you find that that very milk, if you are to cross the border, like if you go to Elegu and you're buying it from South Sudan, you find that the imported milk in South Sudan is more cheaper, 775,000, as opposed to Nido or Lato from Uganda, same 2 kgs in Kampala, which is at 150. So you find, I don't know how they are implementing. And remember, in the region we are at different levels. Some are infants, some are crawling, others are running. So you find that the charges, Congo, for example, I don't think there is, this one could be my perception, but the administration when it comes to tax collection is not developed. So you find that there is a lot of smuggling and dumping. Goods go into Congo, and then you find that through the cross-border trade, they end up in Uganda. So you find that it is a challenge, which is an administration cost to Uganda when it comes to collection. Then we have the tax-based erosion. You realize that when we are collecting, it is the same people whom we are collecting from. We have a very big, we are predominantly an agricultural country. And the few who are paying, whenever increase comes in, it is affecting the same group. Fuel, you see now we have added 200 shillings per litre excise duty. That one has an impact on the landing of food stuff, say coming from Chisoro Irish potato to reach Kampala. And you may realize that you find that sometimes the Irish potato coming from Nairobi to Kampala is cheaper. Why? I don't know. He was my lecturer, so I can't say much, because when it comes to economics, he knows it more than I do.
You are now my lecturer. Now I do research and she's giving me data. This is a research area we need to engage.
So we look at trade distortions. A lot is coming in. We are talking of build by Uganda. He talked of duty remission, that we are encouraging industrialization, we are promoting the import substitution and promoting the export-driven strategies. But now that one has come in like we are talking of people who are producing in the free zones, that they are mainly producing for export. Then we have also sectors like the mining sector, which is mainly, you find that most of our minerals are export-driven. But within that, you find that as well as we are trying to put that, he talked of remission, that raw materials, some raw materials are available, but most of it we are importing. Maybe the beauty is that come July, 1st January, I think that's when we first export our oil through EAC. So some of the imports we have been importing. I think when our refinery starts operating, it may reduce on importation of, say, plastics, which we mainly use for packaging, things like fertilizers, and the petrochemical industry, some of the items. So that one may bring down partly the cost of doing business in Uganda. Then we have the harmful incentives. As much as we are promoting, you realize that some of the people take advantage, especially our investors. You're given a 10-year tax holiday. The person comes in, gets the incentive. He knows after 10 years, he's free to disappear, or even change location, go to another country. But some of them was, interestingly, when we were, fish was one of them, that we had so many companies which were dealing in fish processing, and it was mainly for export. But of all those companies, most of them were foreign. And you realize that the money which used to come from the fish, which is Ugandan fish, exported, will not return to the Ugandan banks. It ends up in the banks in their country of wherever the investor is coming from. So the only bit we are getting from there, maybe you look at the export levy on fish, maybe fish moors, 0.2. You're looking at the Mugongo was, and the head which remains, that it has a 0.05. But most of them you find that it benefits some individuals the other end. Of course, that one can be for my boss here, who does tax education, to look into that. Then we are looking at the trade distortions. That he talked of multiple membership. We have goods, say, within the community. We sell, transfer, in fact it's transfer. When you're moving from here to Nairobi to, it is a transfer of goods from here. It's within the market. But now you realize that Tanzania is a member of SADC. And being a member of SADC receives goods, say, from South Africa. Free of duty, they enter Tanzania. So how do you separate goods which are coming in from Tanzania? And you say these are of Tanzanian origin, assuming it's a fabric, a dress, or this one is coming from the third-party market. Of course, we have derogation which is going on, that now we are entering the African Free Continental Trade Area. But you find the multiple membership, okay, Kenya, Uganda, DRC, South Sudan, I don't know whether it has entered, we are a member of COMESA. So that one, the playing ground is the same. But then you find that if, say, DRC is a member of the South-to-South Cooperation, it could receive goods from, say, Namibia or whichever country down there. And the only difference is that the distance in Congo does not warrant easy movement of some of those products into Uganda. It doesn't make economic sense. But again, the other challenge we have is the products for beautification, ladies. You realize that a lot of it comes, being a French-speaking country, they are a member of the African French-speaking countries. So you find that most of those products which have hydroquinone and what, they are coming from the Western Africa. You are talking of Cote d'Ivoire, Cameroon, and all that. Then you find it is entering here. So those are parts of the challenges. But you know, challenges have to be there. It is part of the day-to-day running of the business. So how do we look at improving or addressing some of those challenges which we have? We are talking of an aggressive digital transformation. That now, if you are Justine, I'm registered, I have a NIN. But that NIN is now the one which is going to be used as your tax identification. That if you're paying water or you're paying whatever, there is somehow you have to get the information, because the interagency, you see, URSB, you're seeing others, but how do you get? You know that if you're paying, I know you have paid the water, you've paid the electricity, you paid the, so there is somehow trying to cover the link within that. Then we have a very big informal sector. When you look at my sisters, I come from the East. If you are around Busia, Malaba, you realize the movement of those sisters of mine. The cross-border movement because of the variations in tax. And maybe one issue which is very interesting, or where we are saying that regional membership. Kenya has a bilateral agreement with Pakistan, and they import rice. You know, when you're importing rice from outside the community, the import duty rate is 75% or 375 US dollars. It has both the ad valorem and specific rate. But now, Kenya requested that they have a shortage of food. So they import instead at 35%. So you realize that other rice coming from other countries into the region are paying the other specific or whichever is higher. So now if you realize that most of the arrests along that route is mainly rice. So Kenya has farmers, for example, who are growing rice. But the fact that they are importing, because when you are importing, you say, I don't have enough food. Or if I'm a student, I'm living on handouts. Do you have enough to give your neighbors away? Or to sell to your neighbor when you're living on handout? So you realize that some of the challenges, especially in the East, when you see the item which is highly smuggled is rice. So you realize that it is affecting our local farmer, the person who are growing rice. And you find that most of the mbio is rice. Then you look at things which, another one which comes in, I don't know how that one arises, is wheat flour. I come from a region which takes a lot of chapati. So you realize that when you're taking Rolex, that is one of the raw materials. So that one is high, and most of the motorcycles and vehicles, including some of the government vehicles, incidentally, when you see arrested, they carry some of those goods, but simply because they are not aware of what they are carrying. So when they arrest you, don't think that the interagency is not working, but it is due to you carrying goods which are contraband to our, and they are affecting the growth of agriculture within.
Madam Justine, we're going to hold your solutions because they are going to come back. Some of them people will be asking you more of what are you doing about it. So we want to hold it there for now, partly because of that, so that you'll give the responses of what we are doing in one package. But you've really raised quite a number of issues for us that we need to consider in the region. I was about to ask Paul, why should it be Kenya to join us on the VAT of 18 or us to join Kenya on the VAT of 16? Because it looks like learning from the Irish, the lower rates are better for development, they are better for collections. So who should be joining who? We will hear those conversations from you as a part of our recommendation, so that we'll make our life easier. She has mentioned quite a number of taxes that Kenya is really below us. And downtown, when I was downtown this week, as part of my usual research, I realized a lot of Ugandans are now offloading goods in Kenya, paying taxes there, and then using the EAC free trade area to bring things into Uganda. The rice people will soon learn that and simply say, I'm trading within East Africa, why are you even arresting me? But then when you check, it will be Pakistan rice. A lot of things are coming in at implementation level, and that's why I want to hold her there, because a lot is at the implementation level that Paul needs to hear in. But also we want to invite in at this point Honorable Francine Rutazana, chairperson of the IALA Committee on Trade and Communications, who is online. You know, in Uganda, sometimes we are voting. The internet somehow finds itself away. We were doing it in Kalangala, but thank God the internet is on and remained on. So, Honorable Francine Rutazana, can you hear us? Can we hear you as well for your submission? Have we lost the signal? I don't think so. Kasit, I hope you hear what you are go through as a hassle. While you are arguing them down there, it is beyond them. But it is them that you see. So whatever you go down there, be kind to one another. We have an arbitration panel arranged by Siatin that will be receiving those complaints on our behalf. Honorable Francine Rutazana, have we got him? Can you hear us? We want to hear from the EAC Committee on Trade itself. Trade, communication, and investment. Please keep taking your notes. Sheraton has been kind enough to give us pens and paper in case you forgot yours at home. Take note of those things. Even if we don't tackle it, hand it over to the desks that will make sure it is captured in the records. But the minister will gladly have a conversation on with his technical teams. Minister, these are your servants. Ask them anything. If they don't answer, we know what we do with them in civil service. We'll bring them back to you in a cabinet paper. But they are good officers. Technical team, are we having our honorable online? I'm not sure that is him. You know, these are the things that Justin is telling us. People are now trading online. People are trading online. The other day I met young people who are making orders of dresses, and somebody was telling them, we are abroad, we can deliver in 3 days. I'm like, those goods must be in Uganda. There's no way you deliver within 3 days, and you are claiming you are abroad. But they were adding a tax component, which I'm very sure never goes to URA. Because those goods were already sitting in Nansana, in Kavule, somewhere in somebody's home, or some go downtown. It only takes water to know what is in downtown. When water comes, then you realize people are downtown there where cars are supposed to be parked, and they are trading in items. Honorable, you are online. Please proceed. The floor is yours. Fred is my name, just for reference, and I have so many people here waiting to listen to your views and opinions. Honorable Francine Rutazana, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, good people. Are you hearing me?
Very well, loud and clear.
Okay. I beg your indulgence because I am in Tanzania and the network is not good. I think better is to switch off the video so that I will not be losing my little internet I have.
We all do that,
good?
so it's in order, Honorable. You can switch off the internet.
Okay, thank you very much.
The picture, not the internet, eh?
So I thank you very much for the opportunity. As I told you, I am now in Tanzania. We are in Arusha in a plenary sitting, and we have also the opportunity to pass yesterday the budget of the community 2026-2027, which, if I may say, have a significant component on trade in the investment opportunities in terms of road, enhance performance at the port. As you are aware, we are using the port of Dar es Salaam and the port of Mombasa, which are serving not only Tanzania and Kenya, but also across to Uganda, to South Sudan, then DRC, and also for the agenda of integration. On the budget, we are also talking about the enhancing the capacity of the OSPPs, the one-stop border post. Those facilities which are facilitating the smooth trade among partner states for goods and persons. And if I may recall, it was, I think, 2 days before, we were discussing a report from the same committee, the Trade and Investment, regarding the performance of those OSPPs in the region. And if Seatini will allow me, I may share even the report so that you can see what we have observed specifically for 4 border posts in Busia, that is Kenya, Tanzania, no, Kenya, Uganda, in Rusumo, that is Rwanda, Tanzania, in Kobero, Kabanga, that is Burundi, Tanzania, and Taveta Horiri, which is between Tanzania and Kenya. The report is really very rich, and the new budget is also basing on the outcomes of that report so that we can continue improving the functions and the functionalities and the performance of those OSPPs. The budget is also talking about the digital economy. As you are aware, the world of today is now moving really very fast with the digital connectivity and innovation to drive the economy and trade. And on that particular side, we are looking at how to improve the connectivity at those OSPPs, the one-stop border post, so that the interoperability of systems for customs to go fast and also to be smooth will help the traders and the trade communities to not delay when they are doing their clearance at those stop border posts. We are also looking at the improvement of the e-payment in the region. This is another critical area whereby traders are asking to make sure that when you are, for example, in Kenya, you would be obliged to pay through, for example, the USD when you have a business in Uganda. That is really killing our business. And now the e-payment is on the track for the East African community to make sure that when you are in one of the partner states, it will be easy to use the e-payment so that you can transfer the money to another partner state without passing through those international currency. On agriculture and agro-business program, the budget is also looking at how we can enforce laws at the regional level, whereby we can have harmonized laws which are ensuring that especially the common standard is really moving in the region. When you have your product, for example, in Kenya or Uganda, and you want to move them to another country, the standard will be the same, and you will not be obliged to pass through the other different inspections, which are costing but also making a delay when you are waiting for those results. And we have also observed that for those inspections, most of the cases on the OSPPs, the laboratories are not well equipped. So this component of the component in this budget is looking at how can we improve the standard, the legal framework, but also the equipment related at the border post, so that the movement of goods, especially the agricultural product, will not be delayed because of those different inspections. That is very important for the region. We have some good institutional framework. We have, for example, East African Business Council, which is a partner, a good partner in the East African community business, and the budget is looking at how to enhance the collaboration between the partner states, the East Africa at the regional level, but also the business people from the regional at the national level, so that they can improve the collaboration and see how any problem and challenges they are facing are already resolved at the level of national level using the structure which are already at that level regarding the resolution of conflict at the national, and when it is not resolved at that level, to be able to resolve them at the regional level without taking much time. I think that is the most important highlights I can give in the budget passed yesterday for the financial year 2026-2027. We are also looking at how these national budgets are contributing to the implementation of EAC industrialization policy and the development of regional value chain. On that kind of particular case, the EAC is now looking at how to improve regional competitiveness and diversification, reflecting the higher value added production, increased industrial input, and expanded participation of partner states in the regional and the global value chain. So the budget is especially talking about awareness at the level of national of countries, to see if what they are doing can serve the regional level, so that we can enhance the quality and be able to be competitive, not only in Africa, but also at the world level. But before getting there is another level of the East African community wanted to achieve. It's to improve the intra-EAC trade by removing the NTBs. The NTBs, which are there and are really hampering the smooth trade in the region, we are looking at customs procedures. How can we now make them happen so there is no NTBs, whereby when a customs is now ready a document on the side of one the partner, another country is not able to interpret them. The procedure of customs is very, and that is roadblocks, the electrical cargo system, whereby and throughout those roads, you see that there are some stop or some roadblocks which are put illegally, and those NTBs have to be removed, and the East African Legislative Assembly is ready to continue overseeing if those NTBs are really removed progressively. Also of NTBs, we are talking about a continuous observation East African Legislative Assembly to remove the restrictions of goods and services under the Common Market Protocol. We all about the movement of goods, movement of persons and services, but when it comes to implementation, we are seeing a lot of restriction from partner states. So now the removal of those restriction is on the Assembly together with the Council of Ministers to see to show them the case by case where what do we have at this and how can we now remove such an NTB. We are talking about the perspective. I think I have.
Honorable, your internet seems to be giving way.
Oversight how the program throughout the budget implementation is now running, and now on the mark of
Please let her know that her internet is not giving way while the communications is sharing with us. So we might have to hold it there. We have received her views. When the internet is stable, we may get back to her. But you've picked off her views and what the EAC is doing to harmonize. The budget was passed, so it's good to go for the financial year. At this point, I want to invite Hilda to give us her views from the civil society perspective. We're not only harmonizing taxes, but also the fiscal policies, because the two speak to each other. Hilda, you have the floor.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. Mhumza. Civil society perspective on to what extent are EAC partner states moving towards macroeconomic convergence. And here we have about 4 fiscal rules, one on inflation, there is one on public debt in present value terms, then we have something on the fiscal deficit, including grants, and then on the reserves, yeah? And of course, there are mixed reactions. I will also borrow Paul's words of the good and the bad. Of course, we see that there is some commitment towards attaining macroeconomic convergence, because one, when you look at the EAC states, we've seen resilience despite the shocks in terms of growth, but also on the other hand, deliberate policy reforms to actually comply to the fiscal rules under the macroeconomic convergence criteria under the YAMO protocol. And one thing that I would want to applaud the IALA for in the current budget, the one that was passed yesterday, there's been about USD 4.1 million that's been allocated towards harmonization of fiscal and monetary policies, but also operationalization of the East African Monetary Institute, and then integration of the financial systems towards implementation of the IAMO roadmap. Really, you know, if you do not have resources, there is really hardly much that you can do. So, but of course, challenges persist. Maybe just a little delve into how states are performing. When it comes to these fiscal rules, what are we doing better? What are those that we are trying to do better? One, when you look at the reserve benchmark, whereby the reserve benchmark of having at least 4.5 months of import, we see that some partner states are doing well. When you look at Tanzania, it performed at about 4.9%. That is as at June 2025. But also looking at states like Kenya, they have improved towards this. Uganda is picking up. We are still low, below the threshold. When you look at the background to the budget for this year, our reserve cover was at about 4.2%. 4.2 months of import. But on the other hand, we see that this grew from about 2.3 months of import in December 2024. So it really shows good progress towards macroeconomic stability from the central bank, but also in a coordinated approach with the Ministry of Finance and all these other agencies. But when it comes to performance on fiscal deficit, of course, now when you look at this fiscal rule, it includes grants. And we see that several states are diverging from this, but of course it explains the issue that our comrade from URA has talked about, the bit around the challenges they face in raising revenues. But on the other hand, when we have high expenditure priorities as EAC countries, we see that countries like Uganda, of course, we expect the ratio to reduce to about 5.8 in the coming year, that is 26-27. But also we see that other states like Kenya, they're at about 5.8%. We see Burundi trying to come closer to that 3% benchmark, but it's not yet achieved. Then the big elephant in the room, of course, is now when we come to our debt levels as a nation, as a community. We see, of course, a lot of leveraging debt financing for development in the region for various aspects beyond infrastructure, but also the aspect around when you look at some of the remarks that were raised in the morning, there is a sort of bit of dwindling aid, but on the other hand, we have low DRM. We were trying to do an analysis as CIATINI and realized that there are so many untapped sources of revenue or areas where we've not really leveraged as a community. One, we're looking at how local governments actually contribute to the national resource envelopes in the various states, and we saw that local revenue contributes hardly a third of the budgets, across the EAC states. And yet we need to sort of engage more the East African Community Local Government Association to see that how do we ensure that these also contribute to the DRM broadly. But on the other hand, we see that the challenges that our colleague from URA noted, that the tax administration challenges, so that usually impede us to achieve the revenue targets, but also on the other hand, the international tax rules that really constrain us from gathering enough revenues from potential taxpayers. There is a colleague of ours in the Tax Justice Alliance that raises a scenario of the areas that have really not been tapped into, the mineral potential of the community. When you look at areas around debt sustainability, one of those key parameters that are used to assess debt sustainability, there is something on debt to export ratio. And when you look at our exports, really, now when you look at Uganda's exports, gold is really one of those that is, contributing so much revenues. But also states like Burundi, because I was looking at their economic outlook, they expect that they would have gold, they would realize about 5-point-something tons of gold by 2028. And this is one of the benchmarks they are using to say that it would sort of help them to reduce their debt to GDP ratio in nominal terms. But on the other hand, when it comes to the risk of debt distress, this may not be realized because it's highly hinged on the exports, which are which are sometimes affected by the prices in the international market. So on the other hand, we see when it comes to the fiscal rule on, I've talked about inflation, the reserve cover, the fiscal deficit, then the public debt. Yeah, I think those are those, but keenly what we want the discussion to look like, Honorable Minister, is on the risks. How do we mitigate risks that would impede us from attaining macroeconomic convergence? If we've realized that we see that we are doing well in terms of upping our game, in terms of having more reserves as nations. Remember, nations that do not have reserves are really not sovereign. So for us to be sovereign as a community, we need to boost our reserves, not as a one-off, but in a continuous manner, because even when it comes to macroeconomic convergence, at least you should maintain these fiscal rules for at least about 3 financial years and more. Then we see the risk of continuous low DRM. When you look at the EAMO protocol, it says that EAC partner states have a potential to raise tax to GDP ratio to about 25%, but we see that none of the states actually has realized this. In fact, most of the states are not even close to 20%. Most of them are having this ratio oscillating between 12 to 16. Okay, some states, Kenya has at times attained the 15%. And of course, we see these are the big players in the community. The economy is quite larger than the rest. Then another risk is
NBS happening now.
Every taxi, truck, bus or border you see on the road is a business. And every time you don't take good care of it, you risk losing money. That's why we created Union Oil to keep your vehicle's engine well oiled and your business running smoothly.
Ono ye wafe, border, taxi, bus, and truck drivers, not forgetting you my kazi. Use Union engine oil for superior protection and high engine performance. Order from any Union depot or Union stockist duka. Union, the better way.
Love doesn't end at I do. That's where the real journey begins. This year, the Bride and Groom Expo 2026 invites you to experience Beyond I Do, a journey of love, home and family. From planning your dream wedding to building your dream home, from unforgettable honeymoons to starting a family and making the right financial decisions for your future, it's all here under one roof. Meet trusted experts in home living, real estate, finance, parenting and lifestyle. Discover ideas, solutions, and inspiration to guide your next chapter. Whether you're newly engaged, newly married, or building your future together, this is your complete life journey experience. Happening 26 to 28 June 2026 at the Uma Multipurpose Hall. To book a stall, call 0772 354 940. Don't just plan a wedding, plan beyond it.
From 11 June to 19 July, everything can wait. The FIFA World Cup 2026. Catch all 104 matches on 4 dedicated channels, live on SuperSport, only on DSTV.
And that's it for today. Till the next episode.
Like a daily bando, like a daily bando, like a daily bando. Omuliro nguwulira muli mu mutima kukankana like drums. Kalakata, kalakata, erendungu yakusabula. We gonna do free on fire, free on fire, free on fire.
Some moments make headlines, others quickly shape our nation, but every moment matters. This August, step into Uganda's story through the eyes of one of its finest visual storytellers. Through the Lens is back. Bigger, bolder, more compelling than ever before. This August 7th, 2026. Witness the defining moments that shaped our nation, from the intensity of the 2026 general elections to the strength of our communities, the beauty of our culture, the courage of our leaders, and the resilience of our ordinary Ugandans whose stories deserve to be seen. Every frame tells a story. Through the Lens, Season 2. Experience Uganda's stories, one frame at a time. Up next. NBS. Always. Live at 1.
A very good afternoon, and thank you so much for keeping it NBS Television always. Welcome to NBS Live at 1 with me, Tracy Kansime. The 6th edition of the East African Community Post-Budget Dialogue for the financial year 2026-2027 is on, with calls from stakeholders to address challenges such as a narrow widened tax base, improve tax administration, combat tax evasion, support SMEs and ensure debt is directed to productive investments. This dialogue comes at a critical time following the tabling of the East African budget of $110.9 million for the financial year 2026-2027, marking the start of the 7th East African Development Strategy Agenda, anchored on deepening integration and unlocking its benefits. We now take a moment to listen in to the deliberations that are currently happening.
But this is to say we're live on NBS, and want to thank NBS as a partner. Was it NBS? Yeah, who make sure these messages go out there to the citizens and those who make policies. Paul, what is it that you want to add on, and then I'll get to Justin.
Yeah, first of all, just as a point of information, UK does not refund VAT anymore. So you are lucky. In 2022, they rescinded that decision. They removed it from the law. So now if you pay 18%, it will get stuck in the UK. There.
Maybe that's why they are having problems. 7 prime ministers in 10 years. I will go there and advise them. But Honorable Aisha Nabulo, MP Sironko, will recognize your presence.
Yeah, just to finish, the reason they removed it is because of VAT fraud. The same thing we are experiencing here with the VAT refund system. There were a lot of, even with the high technology and the digitalization in the UK, still people were cheating the system, and they decided just to get rid of it. Though there are so many other countries, including some in Africa here. I think Mauritius does have a VAT refund system. Yeah. That's what I wanted to add. In regard to, you had asked me a question earlier on the different rates for the CET, depending on the finality of the good being imported. If you could put it into context, I could answer that question. On the different CET rates from 0 to 35%.
Yes, we talked about now. The definition is not clear. The policy seems and the law seems to be clear. You are saying if we import goods from outside the region, which are easily available here, you apply 35%, the finished, what you consider finished products. If they are not easily available here, I think the rate was 15%. 25. Yeah. Now the question is who.
The details of this story will also be coming up in our subsequent